We are live from the Empowering Mom Studio, and I am here with my best friend Michelle, back again, our resident sex expert. And what have you got for us today, Michelle?
Oh my gosh, all kinds of things. Well, as you guys know, we are going to talk about sex after a baby, sex in your postpartum period. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things. But I went pretty far down the rabbit hole on this one. So bear with me, because we're not just going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about, your sense of self and healing after birth and what that looks like. And I know you guys have talked a lot about all of the things postpartum this month, right? And Carly, when you asked me when I wanted to go this month, I was like, last. I want to go last. Because here's the thing. Sex postpartum is kind of last. It's the last thing that the last sort of the final frontier, right? For most of us, we're not really thinking about that. We have all kinds of other things to think about, breastfeeding and, yes, healing, but healing takes time and probably more time than a lot of people think. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit. And, not all of this is going to resonate with everyone, because we know that, as we know, sex is a very unique thing and everyone walks a different experience. But if you guys are looking for resources as you prepare for a baby, or as you're, sitting nursing and you're listening to books on Audible and all kinds of things, there's a couple of people that are kind of my inspiration, and I'd say my heroes. These are the people that I learned from. So of course, Sue Johansson, right? If you haven't heard of Sue Johansson, learn about Sue Johansson. She's Canadian, which is pretty cool. She is like my life goals. And is like my original sex educator. Like, I learned a lot about sex watching the Sunday night sex show at sleepovers when I was a kid. And
I remember that.
Yeah, right? And I think that, a lot of times the information that we get about sex as we are becoming women and sort of in our maidenhood is not accurate. And so she is a really good resource. I think every kid should watch the Sunday night sex show as they're growing up, because I think it's really cool. Jane Hardwick Collins. So she is a midwife. She used to be a registered nurse. She's an author, and she is a reclaimer of feminine knowledge, wisdom, and power through reconnection with what she calls the women's mysteries, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to reference some of her teachings throughout this. Of course, Wapio. I love Wapio. I did a birth training with her with staff a little while ago. She is a wise woman, and she really connects the dots when it comes to, our womanhood, our sexual well-being, birth. It's all very woo, but it's the real deal. And she really speaks to a lot of things that are left unnamed by like the medical model of birth. So definitely check out her teachings. You can find her at the Matrona. And then, of course, Kimberly Ann Johnson. She is where I get most of my really great information specifically about healing postpartum and sex postpartum. So she's a somatic experiencing sex and trauma therapist. She's a doula. She's a huge consent advocate. She's a sexological body worker. For those of you that don't know what a sexological body worker is, please check it out, because it's very interesting and not something that anybody is going to just tell you about. She's a yoga instructor. She also does structural integration body work. She's a scar tissue remediation specialist, and she wrote The Fourth Trimester, which is basically the postpartum Bible. If you're going to read one book about postpartum, read The Fourth Trimester. It's something else. And then, of course, my Transforming Birth Luminary Circle. I love them. I think that it's really taken being in this really supportive group of women to kind of push me into sort of standing on my own when it comes to the fact that I do know a lot about this stuff, and I'm really interested in it. So got to give them a shout out. So I think we could probably link some stuff later, but one of the things that Jane Hardwick Collins talks about is honoring rites of passages in your life. And she believes, and many people do, that we have sort of 4 categories of our lives as women. So we have our maidenhood, which is birth to childbirth, and she calls this the spring of our lives. And then we have our motherhood, which is, of course, childbirth until menopause, which is the summer of our lives. We have our mega stage, which is menopause to retirement, which is the autumn of our lives. And then we are what she calls crone, which is retirement until death. And that's the winter of our lives. So one of the things that I like to talk about is that each season of our lives is truly transformational. We are complex beings, like very complex. And we were talking about this yesterday, Carly. I was like, women are more complex than men. And, you know, with each of these transitions, we become someone new. And that's just the reality. So, you know, to kind of put it into perspective, every plant or tree goes through seasons. And with every, you know, summer season or spring season, this tree or plant gets new blooms. And no one would think that that bloom is the same flower as the season before, right? That wouldn't make sense. And so it's still a part of the same tree, still a part of the same person, right? But that bloom or that stage of your life is something new, right? And I think that that's something that we really need to settle into honoring and respecting, because those are the rites of passage that we move through, and they're really important. So what we're going to talk about mostly today is our summer, which is motherhood and parenthood. Jane Hardwick Collins says, the way the rite of passage of birth is managed dictates to a woman her role and value as a mother in the culture. A culture's attitude to and value of mothers are reflected in the practices used for birth. And I think that really resonates. And we talked about, you know, my last talk, we talked about how important sensuality is in birth. I believe this really deeply. I think that if we are able to tune into our sensuality and our sexuality in our birth, I think that that has a bit of a ripple effect, and it allows us the space to settle and sink back into our sensuality as we move through this summer season of our lives. And so really, this all fits together pretty nicely, which is wild, right? So before we talk about sex, let's talk about healing, because you know, you have to do that before you can be intimate with your partner. So I think of it as an inside out approach. So we kind of have areas of our bodies that we need to address. So the first one is our heads and our hearts. So we recover from our births, and we, you know, as Wapio says, we weave our story, right? Whether our births are ecstatic or orgasmic or traumatizing or somewhere in between, we always leave transformed. And we do things. We write down our birth stories, but that's not enough to just write it down. We often seek to talk about it, and we talk about it with our partners, our birth keepers, our parents, our friends. It's really important to be very sure-footed in who is a safe space for these conversations, because there's a really big difference between birth story medicine and trauma bonding, right? We know this. So you know that trauma bonding is not helpful. So make sure that you set those really healthy boundaries with the people that you're sharing your experience with before you share it. And if you don't feel like you have a safe space, or you feel like you need something else, please seek out a counselor or a body worker or a somatic experiencing therapist to work through your birth with. That's really, really important. The second thing I want to talk about is our nervous system. So many of us have birthed before, probably in this group. So for those that have, and I don't know if you remember this, Carly, but do you remember trembling or shaking after you had your babies?
Mine is usually before. I shook before, just before transition. And again, the early labor with Michaela, I did a lot of shaking and also shivering.
Right. So some of us do it as our cervix changes. Some of us do it postpartum, and they made it postpartum, like after we've birthed our baby or after we've birthed our placenta. And sometimes this can be quite violent. I often see dads like putting blankets around moms because they think that they're cold, but really this is something else entirely. So we often kind of explain this one away by saying things like, oh, that's a sign of your cervix changing, or that's your uterus shrinking back down to size. And like, yes, and it's more than that. That trembling is actually your nervous system completing the stress cycle of birth. So we hold on to birth within our nervous system, and we do complete that stress cycle intuitively. But sometimes things happen in our births that are not following that physiologic birth process or pattern. So if it's minor, we often don't even recognize this on a cognitive level, and our nervous system is left feeling charged or down. Reason that other mammals in the wild do not become traumatized every time they're like chased by a predator or something like that would possibly traumatize them happens is because they're very good at completing that stress cycle. So an example of this would be like a fainting goat. Anybody seen those videos of the goats fainting, right? Like it's really funny, but they're stressed. And so they like seize up and they fall over and they don't get up right away. They actually lay there for a while. And what they're doing is they're completing that stress cycle. And then when they get up, they kind of shake it off. We often see this with rabbits. If they play dead, they often shake kind of like a birthing person after they've played dead and managed to evade capture. That is them doing this instinctively. So one of the problems with us as humans is, I always say to people, human beings are the only mammal that is smart enough to convince itself it's not a mammal, which is tricky. And so we have kind of unlearned this behavior, and our adrenal systems really struggle because of it. So, one of the things that I do find is that those unresolved stressors live in our bodies and surprise us in areas that become challenging for our nervous system to manage. So if we had a vaginal exam that left us feeling charged in our nervous system, one of the things that can surprise us is that penetration becomes challenging because our nervous system catches fire every time our vaginal opening is touched, right? And that's really big. So if this is something that you're experiencing, really think about completing that cycle. Steph was reading a book about this, and I'll send it to you so that you can link it in the notes or whatever, because she was reading about how to retrain yourself to complete these stress cycles. I heard a story of a woman. I don't remember who told me this story, but she had that trembling with her first birth after her baby was born, and her husband wrapped her in a blanket, and she really tried to hold it in. And she didn't enjoy that experience. And so with her second, she was, I think, getting out of the pool, and she started that trembling, that shaking, and she shook and shook and shook. And then she paused, and then she said, hold on. And then she shook and shook and shook. And she said, oh, okay, that was for this baby. So she felt like she needed to complete that stress cycle for her first birth, and then again for this second birth, which I find really interesting. Yeah. And then the last thing is, of course, our physical bodies. So, there's all kinds of things that we need to repair. Our cervix, tissue, we have organs that shift, our pelvic floor, fascia, if we experience diastasis recti, we have that abdominal muscle that we need to repair. And of course, possible surgical wounds from a C-section. Right? So we know that in pregnancy, a human being sits in your pelvis and on that pelvic floor hammock for your whole pregnancy, and then they really settle in at the end, and that's a lot, right? It's strenuous. If you experience a vaginal birth or even a C-section in which your body dilated to completion and then we hit a stalled point or baby didn't quite descend, we deal with a lot of trauma especially on our pelvic floor hammock. But then if the baby passes through, then it's passing through the cervix, the vaginal canal, and then of course the vaginal opening. And that's all very intense, right? We know that this leaves our birth anatomy weakened, but also sometimes it leaves us injured, right? So we know, I did some research, we know that the pelvic floor symptoms are significantly associated with reduced sexual arousal, infrequent orgasm, or something called anorgasm, where you can't achieve orgasm, and something called dyspareunia, which is pain during sex. If you also had any sort of instrumental birth, this can add even more complexity to all of this and potential birth injury. So, there's a real physical reason why sometimes we struggle postpartum, and sometimes why sex or penetration hurts. And, that's one of the things I always say to people is like, there's nothing wrong with you, right? This is part of the process for some people. And we should treat ourselves gently and really rehabilitate ourselves. I saw something a little while ago about how, like, it was a comparison of if you injure your shoulder or some sort of muscle, you tear your ACL, and the process that you go through to rehabilitate that versus rehabilitation after birth. And it's an absolute joke. Like, there's just no comparison. And it's because it's women's health. It's one of those things. I was bitching to Steph about it yesterday, and she was like, "Are you surprised?" I was like, "No, I'm just mad. I'm just really mad about it." So let's talk about belly birth, because I know a lot of people experience belly birth. Recovering from a C-section is hard, right? When we undergo a major surgery, especially a C-section, we know that OBs cut through many layers of tissue, muscle, fat, fascia. They move organs out of the way to get to your baby. I will send you a link, and it's this amazing, a lot of people have probably seen it on Instagram, but a woman who made this little felt model of the anatomy of a C-section and how many layers of tissue and fat and fascia that you have to get through to get to a baby. And it really paints a beautiful picture of how intense this is.
Oh, I have that. That's in my full empowered birth library.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because I found it and I was like, oh, that's a really good example. Because I think that a lot of times people don't really realize how complex that is. It is also important to remember that our bodies are smart, and that they heal from the inside out, but that scar tissue is efficient and non-discriminatory. It will happily attach itself to anything and everything in its path to heal you, right? We also know that scar tissue can become incredibly rigid with time and can cause its own challenges. So belly birth is still birth. Scar tissue can cause pelvic pain during intercourse or penetrative sex. And it is really, really important that people that have had a belly birth still rehabilitate their bodies at the same level that someone who has experienced a vaginal birth rehabilitates their body. And then the other thing I wanted to speak to is this really isn't just about sex. It's about all around wellness. We have to live in these bodies that we birth from, and how we feel in our bodies and about our bodies matters very, very deeply, right? I did some research on, sort of birthing bodies and some of the repercussions. So as many as 45% of birthers experience pregnancy-related girdle pain during pregnancy. So that's even before you have a baby, right? And then 20 to 25% of birthers experience this in their early postpartum period as well. Most birthers become pain-free by 12 weeks-ish, right? But 5 to 7% of people do not, and they live with that. In addition,
I had to be the 5 to 7%,
right?
That's just not fair.
I don't know if this number is accurate, because with the amount of people that I've talked to that have this experience, 5 to 7% doesn't feel real to me. I feel like it's bigger than that. At least maybe the 12-week marker is not as accurate as we think it is. I think this takes longer.
Maybe it's just we're not getting taken seriously.
Yeah, or we don't have the resources to help ourselves, right?
True. Yeah.
And then when we talk about, there's always these funny joking conversations about peeing our pants, right? We always joke about it. I think we do this as a coping mechanism because we realize how terrible this is. I found another study that speaks to the prevalence of urinary incontinence. Found that 45% of birthers still experience urinary incontinence at 7 years postpartum. I'm one of these people. I can sneeze, I can laugh, but I can't jump on a trampoline. I'll pee my pants for sure. And if I do any sort of skipping in an exercise regimen, I will leak. I have to wear a pad. It's awful, right?
Yeah.
So we know, and 7 years sounds insane, but that's the reality. This study also found that 27% of birthers that were initially incontinent in their early postpartum actually regained their continence. But this is the real kicker. 31% who were continent initially actually became incontinent later. This is the part that made me real mad. Because here's what I see. I see that this is telling us that we are not addressing current problems that we're having, and that we are not resting enough to mitigate future problems. We are actually hurting ourselves, which is awful, right? So there's a lot there. And I think this is like always what I say, like take these steps first. Take care of your pelvic health. Go see a pelvic floor specialist. I would love for, at the end of my career, for everyone to think of their pelvic floor specialist like they do, like going for their annual checkup or like a dentist appointment. You go however often and you get like your pelvic floor checkup and you make sure that everything's still okay and you get some new exercises to do to maintain your pelvic floor health. I think that it is a very underutilized tool. And, Steph and I, when we talk to clients, it's like mandatory. I make my clients book 6 weeks, their 6 weeks appointment when they're still pregnant. Because then they make themselves go. Otherwise they forget, right? And then they don't go, right? And I am not immune to any of this. I didn't see a pelvic floor specialist after my first birth. And the only reason I saw a pelvic floor specialist after my second baby was because she was really large and her largeness made me scared. So I went and saw a pelvic floor specialist and it was such a good decision, right? I went to Diane Lee in South Surrey and they are wonderful. There's lots out there.
Okay, Sabrina's actually asking if pelvic floor specialists are covered.
Depends from coverage to coverage, right? This is one of those things. I find some cover it sort of under physiotherapy. Like that's the umbrella that it gets covered under. So you might be able to find a loophole there. I do find though that most, even people that have coverage, I find they get like a portion of it covered, not all of it. Right. But I would argue that this is a huge investment in yourself. And if you can work it into the budget, it's really, really valuable to do that.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know if it would be MSP, maybe partially.
It wouldn't be MSP. It would be extended.
Yeah, because even my chiropractor, I only was able to do partial MSP.
I know, like ours is you get like X amount of dollars for that practitioner per person per year, right?
Yeah.
And
which is ridiculous. Our health is like preventative health is a lot more crucial.
Well, and women's health, right? Because women's
health. Yeah. Well, no, we matter. So screw the patriarchy.
I know. We know that we do. But it's that general idea that we're just fine, right? That we're just fine. Get over it.
We're not fine. We're not fine.
So the next thing I want to talk about is the 6-week checkup. So if you have midwifery care, you see your midwife throughout those 6 weeks. They come to your home. Again, get midwives. Do yourself a favor, get some freaking midwives. Even if you need an obstetrician for some sort of variation or complication of normal, you can have shared care and you need, like, just for the postpartum care alone, get yourself a freaking midwife. Can I say it any louder?
You can preach it all you want. That's what this group is. Yes, get midwives.
Get midwives. So you go for your 6-week appointment. Usually it's in office because they do a pelvic exam. So these are some of the things that will often happen in a 6-week appointment. So you meet with your care provider, you have a brief conversation about how you're feeling. This is so that they can do a bit of a mental health analysis on you. They do an internal exam and they look at your tissues to make sure that you are healed or healing. Okay. So if you had any tears, they're making sure that those tears are healed or that they're on their way to healing and that they are healing well. They're going to look at your cervix. They're going to make sure your cervix is closed. One of the reasons that they tell people not to have penetrative sex is because your cervix remains open after you have a baby. That's why all that lochia is coming out, right? It takes a while for your cervix to close, and you do have a placental wound inside of your womb. And so there is a risk of infection when we have penetrative sex before our cervix has fully closed. So that's one of the sort of clinical reasons why we say no sex for 6 weeks. They talk to you about options for birth control. And then sometimes they say something along the lines of, you can have sex again now if you want to. This is kind of the reason that I got into this. And because this is what happened with my care provider. And I love my care provider. I recommend them highly, but the language left me feeling, I remember leaving the office and being like, am I supposed to want to have sex? Is that normal? Like, does everybody feel like they're chomping at the bit to like get the P and the V like right away? You know? And I was like, because I have no interest in that whatsoever. Like, I was like, pass. And I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I was broken, right? And that's not a nice feeling. It's really normal. I'm here to tell you it's really normal to have no interest in any sort of sexual things at this point. And there's a reason, right? We can find reasons for this. So one of the biggest reasons is our postpartum hormones. So we know that during pregnancy, our estrogen and progesterone increases to the level of taking something like 100 birth control pills a day, basically, which is wild, right? And then by about 3 days postpartum, you're essentially back to baseline, which is why we feel absolutely effing crazy as our milk comes in, right? It almost feels like it's like PMS on steroids, or like when we first started to get our periods and we had those like really intense premenstrual syndrome symptoms. It can feel really big. So we know that these emotional changes are really normal and that they usually level out in the first week or so, but everybody's different, right? And some of us take a while to sort of come back into whatever our realm is of normal for our postpartum. And I mean realm of normal for our postpartum, not normal, because we're not. So let's just quickly breeze through some of the breastfeeding hormones. So if we can or choose to breastfeed, we are dealing with estrogen, oxytocin, prolactin, and testosterone in little doses. So we know that estrogen is a really big part of this dance with, juggling our sexual health and feeding babies. So continued breastfeeding, will give you sort of an extended low estrogen level. We know that our estrogen really dives when we're breastfeeding. And when we continue to do it, it can really keep it quite low for 6 months, or for some women, the whole time. I nursed for 2 years. And I actually think that I'm still struggling with low estrogen levels. So what does low estrogen do? It causes your vagina or your yoni to be as dry as the Sahara Desert. The vaginal dryness is real. It also causes tightness and possibly tenderness. So sometimes that like pelvic girdle pain can be associated with low estrogen levels. So buy your lubricant in bulk, basically. Jesse and I always joke that we should have bought stocks in lubricant, because it's like, there's no lubricant, nothing's happening.
Hey, do you have any suggestions for lubricant?
I do. So one of the things that you have to be really careful about is checking the ingredients list of your lubricant, because most lubricants contain something called glycerin. So glycerin can make for a really nice glide in the moment, but it's actually drying long term. So it works. It does the trick, but it causes more problems like long term. So there's a brand called Good Clean Love that makes a lubricant that I really like. And water-based lubricant is a bit bit of a toss-up. It works for some people, doesn't work for others. I am constantly on the search for good lubricants because I know they're out there. They're more expensive though. Places, anything you can get in a drugstore typically is gonna probably have glycerin in it for the most part. But check the label because it's important. So let's talk a little bit about oxytocin, because this is the hormone of love, right? We know that it also has lots of roles. It's kind of this it runs the gambit of things that it does for us, right? So we know that it's responsible for our milk ejection reflex. We know that it's released in men and women at the time of orgasm and is recognized to increase bonding. We know that oxytocin is a key player in birth progression as well. It stimulates those contractions, which is why our birth time can feel kind of sexy sometimes when we're promoting that oxytocin. FYI, milk ejection during intercourse or sexual experiences does happen. It's not something that people really talk about. I experienced this firsthand where I was intimate with my partner and my boobs were just leaking. And it was really weird because what it does is it meshes both of those worlds and it feels freaky, man.
I had a towel around me.
That's
the
it.
Whole time.
Yeah. So sometimes you just have to have sexual interactions with your partner with a nursing bra on with some breast pads in there, or having a towel on hand is really, really handy. It's incredibly normal though, right? Let's normalize this. It's oxytocin does all of these things. So it's going to affect all of these things. It's not, it's the server of the breastfeeding cafe. Like Steph and I always say, prolactin is the chef and oxytocin is the server. So if we have oxytocin, we have milk, right? So prolactin, let's talk about that. Prolactin is a tricky one. It's the chef. Like I said, it's the one that creates the breast milk. But it also has a role in sex. So we know that it peaks when we're feeding about 45 minutes after a mom starts to feed, and then it reaches baseline levels within a few hours of that feed, which is tough when we're feeding every 2 hours, every 3 hours. So never really, right? This effect is strongest in the early weeks. Prolactin is also a part of this sort of hormonal cascade of lovemaking. So what does that mean? It counteracts the effects of dopamine, which is responsible for sexual arousal, and provides that funny feeling that we have of sexual gratification, that glow after we have a really good orgasm. It has a lot to do with prolactin. So, let's just confuse, let's muddle these two worlds even more, shall we? Right? What is happening? And then of course we've got testosterone. So this is an androgen hormone, which is usually thought of as a male hormone. But we actually know that it is naturally occurring in the female body. It's produced in the ovaries and in the adrenal glands. Testosterone appears to contribute positively to the health of the vaginal tissue. So testosterone is not necessarily the worst thing. And it can contribute to sexual arousal, genital sexual arousal as well. So this is tricky because all of these hormones that are involved with breastfeeding are also involved with lovemaking. And a lot of the sort of byproducts of this is that it can actually dampen the effects of sexual desire, especially in those early months. One thing I will say is that intimacy is more likely to occur if you are feeling very well rested and well cared for. So really, if your partner wants to get jiggy with it, then they need to take care of you, right? They need to take care of you. Some moms feel or are made to feel that stopping breastfeeding will resolve lessening of libido, right? I have heard care providers be like, well, maybe it's time to stop breastfeeding. And of course, it's every woman's right to choose when to stop breastfeeding. Like when they've had enough. I hit 2 years and I was like, get off me. No more. You're cut. Right. I felt very done with breastfeeding. And that's fair. Right. But stopping breastfeeding simply to initiate sexual desire with a partner can often leave us feeling resentful or unhappy about the change in the relationship with the baby. Right? It's an equally important relationship. And then, of course, those negative feelings can actually do the opposite and decrease our desire for lovemaking because we just don't feel good, right? About our decisions. So, of course, it really is a personal choice. But, I'm kind of here to say that it doesn't always have the effect that we think that it will, right? So I think we can kind of start talking more about the sex component of things. So
I play the salt and pepper song.
Right? I know. That was so funny. I was like, oh man. But here's the thing. I want to expand our idea of what sex is. Because there's some really yucky shit when it comes to this word. So the word vagina leads us to believe that sex means penetration. In Latin, the basic meaning of vagina is a sheath for a sword. It's like the yuckiest thing. I just hate it so much. It smells like all kinds of patriarchy in there. It's a terrible thing. So I'm not going to call it a vagina anymore. And I invite you to join my anti-vagina movement. We're going to call it yoni. We're going to call it. I'm here to kind of give you permission to recognize that sex and intercourse, penetrative sex, are not synonymous with one another all of the time. We know this with our logical brains because we know that couples that have the same sex organs often have non-penetrative sex, right? And we still call that sex. So I think it really comes down to heterosexual relationships and the confusion kind of gets really weird in there, right? We know that we also have sex with ourselves. We know that our sex doesn't have to be partnered at all, right? And then, I think one of the ways this is really ingrained in us, like deeply, right? So maybe we stop calling it sex, right? Just like we stop calling vaginas, we call them yonis. Maybe we stop calling it sex and we start calling it lovemaking, right? I know it sounds really crunchy. Like it feels like you're going to have a key party and like everyone's making love, man. Like, oh yeah. That's what I think of. I always think about like the hippies of my parents' generation that made me really uncomfortable when I was a kid. But it can reduce the feeling of pressure that we have to engage with our partner when we reframe it into like a broader spectrum of bonding with them on a sensual level instead of a penetrative level. Right. So if that works for you, then change the name. It's just like how we feel about contractions. Like some of us feel really strongly that we don't want to call it a contraction. Right? Because for us, that feels like yucky. Like I call them sensations. People call them pressure waves. When you rename it, you kind of take the power away from that word. So we could rename it. That's fine. And then let's take it one step further. What if climax and ejaculation was not the point of sex? Like, what a weird idea. Because that's the narrative that we have, right? That sex has one main objective, and that is climax, and more specifically, male ejaculation in a more like heteronormative society. So
I'm just looking to get off of me.
Right?
Well, I don't care about him.
That's great. I love that. But I think that usually like when we watch films and all those things, like the man finishes and then it's over. Right? Party's over. Doesn't matter if you haven't finished, party's freaking over, right? So if we took climax out of the equation, what does that look like? What does that feel like, right? And so one of the things that I think that it translates to is simple, loving touch, right? When we make loving touch the goal instead of climax-based interactions with our partners, I find this really essential in the postpartum period, because here's the thing, you're healing. And climax is not the goal, right? Neither is even sometimes like genital touch. So if we generalize it as loving touch, what does that look like? And how do you speak to that? So it becomes easier to ask for the things that we need in this way, right? So instead, you know, and I do find, you know, there's this idea that men will be bored or not want loving touch. And I just don't think that's true. Because if we're doing something with our partner to like just please them and not ourselves, that comes from a real place of inauthenticity, and that's very palpable in sexual scenarios. And I just don't feel that men, specifically men, enjoy that, right? Because I mean, I know like one of the things that my husband always says is like one of the best parts of our interactions is when I am enjoying myself, right? So this approach helps us to stay emotionally connected in the postpartum, which can be really challenging, right? We're so connected to this baby. Our partner sees us being so connected to this baby, and they're just kind of left in the wind to fend for themselves, and they feel like they can't complain about it because they want you to be connected to this baby. That's important to them too. So how do they communicate their needs, right? So have these conversations, especially I'd say prenatally, if you can, with your partner, about setting the precedent that loving touch is going to still be valued and it is still going to be prioritized, but that penetrative sex is not. And just kind of set that precedent right out of the gate, because then we sort of set those realistic expectations for this postpartum healing journey, right? So, and it releases the pressure. One of the things that I also say is open a meaningful and ongoing conversation with your partner about your sexual relationship, and have this conversation outside of the bedroom. Don't have it in the bedroom. Because when we limit conversations about loving touch and or lovemaking to the bedroom, this can often mean that we are already vulnerable, possibly naked, or this is happening as one of us is attempting to engage, right? And this is challenging because when this happens, we can find ourselves having these conversations in a place of vulnerability, and then it can leave with one or both of the partners experiencing something called touch rejection, right? Touch rejection is basically when one person wants it and the other one doesn't, and the other one feels rejected, right? This doesn't feel good for anyone. Like neither party leaves happy from those scenarios. And if it happens repeatedly, it gives the person that is continually on the receiving end of all of this the feedback that they should just stop trying and that they are not a priority, right? And that's really not how we want our partners to feel. And the other thing too is that it also just plays into these cultural gendered sexual ideas that men always want penetrative sex and women are frigid, right? And we know that's not the case. You're not frigid, you're healing. That is very, very different. So what's the solution to all of this, right? I mean, yes, conversations, but at some point we want to get to a place where we can potentially we can make love, or we potentially could even have penetrative sex again, right? So I think start with yourself, right? We talk about our new bodies. We have just been born as well into these new bodies. We have transformed from a maiden to a mother, and this is all very new. And our culture dictates to us that the goal in our postpartum is to get back to normal, right? But this is really damaging, because the reality is that when you birth a baby, you are brand spanking new, right? Normal doesn't exist anymore because you're new. So I have heard many women speak to feeling that after having a baby, they feel like they did when they blossomed into womanhood or had their first menses. I have heard women talk about how they feel really turned upside down emotionally, that they feel charged, that they feel scared of themselves and their changed body. I've also heard people speak to feeling like a virgin again, right? Like before they ever had any sort of lovemaking experiences. And that, you know, that feeling of like, I mean, we all remember that, right? We all remember going from being a virgin, which I don't like that word, right? Into having experiencing lovemaking and the things associated with that. None of us know what it is that we truly are going to enjoy as we bud into our sexual selves as young people in our maidenhood. We have to muddle through it and we have to experiment. And many of us do this with multiple partners. And this is really challenging because that feels normal, right? To experiment at that stage. And this is a lot of times done before we're in these sort of monogamous relationships, before we're deeply partnered with this one person. So take the same approach and think of it this way. Like, you don't have to become a polyamorous person because you are a new individual. So you're having new lovemaking experiences with the partner that you had before. And if you reframe it that way, sometimes it can feel kind of exciting. Right? But before we can have those experiences, we need to learn about our own bodies, and we need to learn how to care for these new bodies. So Michelle actually posted this in the Luminaries group like last week, I think, and it was the hard truths about self-care. I read it and I was like, oh God.
I remember that. Michelle Tiliakos, she is the leader of our Luminaries group, although she says that we're all pretty much leaders. And she was like, you guys have to take care of yourselves. Like, she's always on us for that.
I know. Well,
we're bringing it to you. So
right?
We're getting it right back.
I think that birth keepers are very much a breed, and we are servants, and we serve everybody before we serve ourselves. So this is, I mean, when I think one of the things I like to say is like, I come at all of this education about sex from a place of, from a very humble place. I'm never going to tell you that I have like the most vibrant sexual life, that it's completely like I'm floating on a cloud of sexual well-being. No, right? I struggle the same as everybody else. I'm going to tell you some stories later. Ooh, they're fun. But I'm going to read this to you. So these are the hard truths about self-care. Number 1, you will disappoint some people when you prioritize your self-care. Number 2, self-care often means doing what you don't feel like doing in the present moment to benefit future you. It's not all bubble baths and face masks. Number 3, your boundaries will scare some people away. It's okay. Let them go. Number 4, don't neglect yourself. Taking care of someone for the sake of taking care of someone else. You don't owe anyone your time, a quick text back, or emotional support when you need to be giving it to yourself first. Number 5, neglecting yourself to take care of somebody else may seem like an act of love, but giving from a place of emptiness only leads to resentment towards the other person and eventually towards yourself. This one feels really real, right? Especially in the postpartum. Number 6, self-care requires letting go of relationships, habits, and choices that are familiar but no longer serve you. Number 7, it means being honest with yourself, especially when the truth is hard to admit. And number 8, self-care is hardest to do when you need it most. That one. So real, right? So you need to make friends with yourself by caring for yourself and by getting to know yourself. So take a mirror. Look at your new vulva and yoni. This can be really scary. I actually made my husband look first, which I kind of regret. I was really scared. So I was like, you look, is it a war zone down there? Right? I should have just looked. I should have just done it. There was nothing wrong with it. It looked perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's really important though, because things shift, things change. I had a bit of a prolapse. That was new, right? It hasn't impacted my life too badly in any way, but it was new, right? And I was able to look at it and identify it and talk about it with my pelvic floor specialist because I had looked at it, right? Masturbate. Masturbate. I'll say it again. Masturbate. Don't be afraid to touch your yoni.
There's a toy out there. I don't know if you've seen the Amazon review viral thing about Tracy's dog, but that one, it was like
No.
somebody had said, yeah, no, it was on Scary Mommy too. It was like this woman had written an article or about this review. It was like,
Yeah.
don't go into the pink light. It's not your time yet.
Yeah, you're
like
gonna
that.
start masturbating and never ever stop. You're just gonna
Yeah, it was basically that. I'm not gonna lie. I went out and I'm like, okay, I have to buy this.
Right?
But
well, I mean, it's for research.
Yeah, it was for research. But
I mean,
Tracy's
I will say start with your hand, because I do find that sometimes vibrating tools, especially in the early postpartum, can be really intense.
Oh yeah. No, don't do it during postpartum.
No.
I made that mistake. I'm like, ew.
Right. Well, some of us experience like labial tears. And so that we know scar tissue can feel quite sensitive. Right. And so when we put a really intense sensation like a vibrator on it, that can be like, oh, too much. Right. And we want these experiences to be, yes, exploratory, but positive. Right. We want to, and like, remember too, we're taking orgasm out of the equation. Don't forget that. The goal of masturbation in this stage is not orgasm, right? Because it's exploration, and sometimes we have to do some exploration before we find gold. That's how it works, right? And then
I needed you as my best friend back then.
Yeah, I make a lot of people feel very uncomfortable. It's fine. When you're ready, you could use vibrating toys, or you could use penetrative toys to see how penetrative sex feels, penetrative lovemaking to yourself feels. It is good to explore those areas, especially if we had perineal tears or tears that went into the muscle tissue, like stage 2nd degree tears or further. We do have quite a bit of scar tissue, and it's really important to know where that is so that we can communicate that when we start to have interactive relationships with our partners, right? And then on that note, after you feel that you have gotten to know yourself very well, you've given your yoni a little how to do, and you're feeling like you're, like you're settling into this new self, right? Then you can reintroduce yourself to your partner and rediscover this new sex life together. Right? So try to think about how your sexual relationship started with your partner, like back in the beginning. Was it perfect? Probably not. My husband's going to kill me. I'm going to tell you a story about the first time we had sex. The first time him and I had sex, he was so nervous. He hadn't had sex with anybody else since before. He was with a previous partner, and they were together for a long time, and he hadn't had sex with anybody else in a long time. So he was so nervous that he sweat all over me. Like, I have never been sweat on by a person more in my life. It was like pouring. It was like raining.
No way. Same.
Yep. I had to change the sheets after.
Oh my God. I thought I was the only one. I'm like, what the hell is this?
No, he was so nervous. He like sweat all over me. It was like not very sexy. Like, to be honest, I was like, oh. So I think it's really important to remember that it's like not always perfect the first time. Sometimes we like bonk heads. We're like figuring it out, right? We haven't found a rhythm with this person. And we also don't know all those like little like erogenous spots that get the other one going. That takes time. And like there's a fluidity that is developed there, right? That takes time.
And we're women and we're complex.
Well, we know that it takes about 30 seconds for a man to reach full mast. Whereas a woman to reach like full engorgement in her vulvular sort of areas, it's usually 30 to 45 minutes. Right. So like when I hear women, and when I hear women be like, oh, like I just like, I need like a lot of foreplay. I'm like, yeah, we all do. Like all of us. You're not abnormal. I think we really need to normalize the fact that we all need quite a bit of foreplay. One of our solutions in our household is that sometimes I will go get started by myself and get myself really.
Oh, I love it. I'm normal.
Right? Everybody needs it. So it's very, very normal to need that like extra TLC if you have the female sex organs. So, you know, especially when it comes to postpartum genitals often literally have new tissue there, right? Like things heal and change and there's new tissue. So we have to explore this sort of new relationship with our genitals. And that exploration requires an insane amount of communication. So I'm going to tell you another story now. After Dylan was born, I had 2 labial tears that kind of went like this, right? They healed and they were fine. And I when I explored down there, I could see them. The flesh was like a little bit more pale and it looked like a scar. Like it wasn't like keloidal or anything like that, but it was there. And I could touch it, but it wasn't super pleasant. And then as we started to move back into our lovemaking relationship, one of the things that I enjoyed a lot, I mean, I don't think I'm unique in this, was oral sex. I really liked when my partner went down on me. It was great, right? So when my husband went down on me, I was expecting it to feel really good, and it didn't. In fact, it felt really, really bad. The only way that I can describe it is that it felt like being licked by a cat tongue. You know how they're like sandpaper? And honestly, I wanted, like, my knee-jerk reaction was to like punch him in the head and be like, get off. Like, I really wanted nothing to do with it. And again, I got into this narrative of there's something wrong with me. I need to be fixed. And I didn't talk to him about it. I just would avoid it. I would just like pretend that I wanted to have penetrative sex instead, and that I was like so eager to have penetrative sex.
So we needed to be best friends back then. We could have shared that. And I could have been like, oh, same. And then we would have been like, oh, okay, so it's normal. We're not, there's nothing wrong with us.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It's so important. And so finally, he's the one who brought it up, because we were in an interaction and he tried to go down there, and I was like, oh no, you know, like, and trying to be like, so, like, almost like not bashful. What's the word I'm looking for? I was like really trying to be like extra feminine and like not let him know that something was wrong necessarily. And he called my ass out. And I
mean, come on. You like that's the same with Tyler. Like, he's like, are you even wanting this right now? Like, do I need to stop? And I'm like, oh no, you can go. And it's like, no, we're stopping.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think it's really important to speak to our needs. And so finally, after having my ass called out, I talked to him about how it felt. And we had a laugh about it because it was kind of ludicrous. The whole thing, like when I actually described it to him as like, it feels like you like have like a cat's tongue. And he was like, what? And we had a bit of a giggle about it. And he was like, okay, well, how would you feel about me just like looking and touching and like you talking to me? So he like went down there and was like fishing about and like licking certain areas. And it wasn't very sexy. I'm not going to lie. But he found the scarring and he touched it with his tongue. And I was like, oh yeah, that's it. It was the scars. It was the tissue. When he touched the tissue with his tongue, that's what just sent me, like, I just hit the ceiling, basically. I didn't enjoy that. And so I practiced some sort of scar tissue type remediation where I would massage it myself when I was masturbating. And he was at first very careful to sort of avoid those areas because it was fairly easy. He just kind of avoided my like inner labia and just focused on my clitoral area. And that was okay. And then we just got to a place where I slowly, that tissue became a little bit more like normalized and sort of aged, essentially. Right now I'm 3 years postpartum from Dylan, and it doesn't feel bad anymore. Right. But it was, I mean, I think that was like a month of like on and off him trying and me trying to fawn away from him and all these silly things when we could have just gotten it done. Right. Had that tough conversation. And he was so game. And I think I was I don't know what I was afraid of. I think I was afraid that he was going to be like, well, it's not really worth it. I'm just going to stop eating you out. Right. And That's not what happened at all. I created this narrative in my head of what that conversation was gonna look like, and that's not what the conversation looked like at all, right? Our partners love us and they want to help us, but we have to speak to our needs, right? The other thing that I kind of like to talk about is this is something that Kimberly Ann Johnson talks about a lot. When you approach, especially penetrative sex in the postpartum, I don't know how many people in your audience have experienced anal sex, probably more than would like to admit, but for some reason there's a connotation about anal sex, but it's most of us have done it, and many of us
taboo's starting to go away.
Yes, and many of us enjoy anal sex. But if you look at it from sort of the same model of anal sex, the first time you have anal sex, it's usually not good. And maybe the second time is also like not good. And it takes a lot of communication and going really slow and stopping and starting and using lots of lube and all of those things. So if we approach, penetrative sex postpartum from this sort of anal sex mentality of like, it's go slow, try new things, use the tools, and it will potentially get better for you as time goes on, that can sort of help our mentality. Now, this is a dance, because what if you are experiencing like real pelvic pain, right? Because one of the things we often hear care providers talk about is having something called maintenance sex, right? So once you reach a point where you can have penetrative sex, then you should be having what's called maintenance sex to sort of maintain your relationship. Yes. Now, to be fair, this works for some people. Some people are like, yeah, it's hump day, and they like dirty text each other all day, and it gets really sexy and so by the time they put the baby to bed, it's like they're both ready to go, right? Because it's hump day, right? And they're excited about it. So maintenance sex does work for some people, right? But if you are sort of approaching this from that sort of anal sex, it's going to get better mentality, or maintenance sex, it's going to get better mentality, and it's not because you're in pain, or you're experiencing sort of no feelings from what, we talked about the nervous system rearing its ugly head. You're having flashbacks, maybe potentially, like this could be an emotional experience for you. Then we are not approaching this from an anal sex that gets better perspective or a maintenance sex perspective, because there is something much deeper happening here and we need to address that, right? So I think we're getting to the tail end here.
Well, we're still good to go.
Yeah, I think that's
still playing on the iPad.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to kind of say, okay, well, I'm in my immediate postpartum or at the tail end of my pregnancy, and I'm looking down the pipe of my postpartum. What can I do to prepare myself, or what can I do right now? And Steph and I have always used the model of like, we have like the 5-day rule, and I believe it's in the 4th trimester, where she talks, I think hers is even more intensive, and it's like 5 days in the bed postpartum, 5 days near the bed, 5 days, I think it's 5 days in the bedroom or something like that, and then 5 days in the house.
Well, Steph is actually, I think she's still on. So if she is, she could probably also put it in there with her rigid.
Yeah. And so what we do and what we prepare our clients for is we say 5 days in the bed for sure, healing yourself, keeping your legs closed, 5 days near the bed. So you're shuffling around a little bit, but not much, right? And 5 days in the house. Now, I'm really leaning into adding another 5, and that is 5 minutes of loving touch every day. And just setting that precedent for yourself and your partner that you are going to engage in 5 minutes of loving touch every day. And I think this is a really good practice because it's going to encourage us to speak to our needs on both ends of the spectrum, right? It's going to what we are going to ask of our partners is that they really do some self-exploration in their own right of what kind of touch will leave me feeling like my cup has been filled, right? That doesn't involve penetration. That doesn't involve genitals, right? So maybe that's a 5-minute shoulder rub. Maybe that's laying in bed together, naked, with your skin touching and breathing together. Maybe that's them just placing their hand on your vulva and feeling the warmth from your vulva, or you putting your hand on your vulva and your hand on their genitals and just breathing together, right? And the goal is not penetration, and the goal is not climax, right? And sometimes it's simpler than that. Sometimes it's sitting on the couch and holding hands for 5 minutes, right? Sometimes it's sitting together and talking about your day for 5 minutes, right? It's that connection that we're looking for. That's the maintenance that we really need to strive for, because I really feel that if we maintain that connection and we maintain the respect between ourselves, and we sort of come to this from like a deep place of empathy for one another, that allows us to speak to our own needs much better. I do feel that the chips kind of fall into place when we are ready for genital touch, when we are ready for possibly penetrative sex. And, you know, one thing I will say though, is like, if it's just not working, right, which we've all experienced, myself included, it's just not working. Whether it's you feel really shaky communicating your needs to your partner, you need to find a form of counseling that works for you, right? There's many different forms, right? Some of us enjoy talk therapy, but talk therapy is not for everyone. I find in birth, somatic, it's a very somatic experience, birth is, right? So I do find that somatic therapy is very, very helpful. There are body workers out there. And I know that one of the things that Kimberly Ann Johnson does is she does internal body work, meaning she is working on tissue internally while working through some of the therapy aspects of things. Right now, this feels very woo for a lot of people, and it can feel weird to go to someone with the idea that they are going to try to heal you on a sexual level with an internal aspect to this. And not every body worker does internal work. I want to say that too. It's hard to find body workers on the mainland. They are rampant on the island. There's a dime a dozen. I got body workers everywhere. I was really frustrated. I was on the hunt for body workers, rolfers, things like that. They're a little tougher to find, but they do exist. And it would be worth, I think, contacting some of the ones on the island if that feels like a fit for you, and seeing if they have any resources that we don't know about, so that, maybe they got an in somewhere on the mainland that we don't know about. But it's worth it. And remembering that you do have to heal yourself before you can, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And we talk about that self-care aspect. You just can't, right? Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I know one of your followers had a question about Kegel balls. Was it?
Yeah. I think we call them the Benoit balls or whatever, but yeah. the Kegel weights. And yes. They're just wondering, what are your thoughts? Are they worth it? I mean, I myself didn't really do much for me.
I chipped a bathtub once because I sneezed while I was in the shower, shot one out in the bathtub.
that image in my head right now. Seriously, why did I not know you existed? We could have been best friends all these years. Like, we have the same sense of humor.
I mean, that's worth laughing at. Like, that was like, oh man.
50 Shades of Grey had the Benoit balls. Could you imagine if they had the bloopers? They just
sneezes and shoots it out. Oh, that's my kind of movie. That's real.
I want to see that one. I want them to do a parody of 50 Shades of Grey.
I feel like there's got to be one out. There's probably a porn. It's probably a porn.
No, I don't want a porn. I want like an actual parody.
I know.
For women to watch, for us to be laughing our asses off. Not something for guys. They get enough crap.
I know they do. That's true. I think that everybody is different. Some people really like the Kegel balls. Some people prefer the yoni eggs. Those are a real fit for some people. One thing I will say is it's not something we're going to be doing right away, right? So there is a book, Sam's the woman that Sam bought bellies from, Kim Botany, wrote a book called Prepare to Push. And it's chapters 8 and 9 that are all about postpartum. And we start with breath work. That's where we start. Your core is weakened and sometimes injured. So we start with activating our core with breath. And that's not a Kegel. That's breath and learning how to just even engage your core again. Because a lot of us try and then like nothing happens. And we got that like jelly belly, right? So start with core breath and see a pelvic floor specialist. I remember when I saw my pelvic floor specialist, I was thinking she was going to give me like hardcore exercises because, you know, I was still living in this silly headspace of like, get your body back. Oh, right. How silly. I remember the first exercise she gave me was that I was going to sit on the floor with my knees bent and my feet flat on the floor, or I was going to lay on the floor with my knees bent and my feet flat on the floor. And I was going to put my hands behind my head and I was literally going to do head lifts. So I went like, she was like, yeah, you're literally doing this. And engaging your core every time you do one, but not hard, gently. And you're going to do this, you know, like 10 times. You're going to do however many reps of that 10 times. And I remember walking out and being like, that seems dumb. Right? And then I went home and I was watching TV and I did the exercises and I was like, oh no, this is hard. Right? Our core and our pelvic floor, our pelvic floor really is like this, it's the seat of our core, right? And it is weak, right? And sometimes it is actually injured. And we can heal ourselves and we can heal prolapses and all kinds of things when we take this sort of slow and steady approach. And one of the things that we always say to our clients is the goal is not to heal quickly. The goal is to heal well and thoroughly, right? So take it slow, start with the core breath, go see a pelvic floor specialist. Do not hit the gym right away. Avoid exercises that are going to put strain on your pelvic floor, like running. Also a mistake that I made because I love to run. And when I run, I run and I'm running for my children. That's what it is.
Yeah,
but
mine was running
and it's like, but it's that impact, right? And our pelvic floor is not strong enough to maintain and like sustain that kind of an impact-based exercise. So keep it really gentle, and you know, move through it in a way that is going to allow you the space to heal in sort of each segment of your journey. And yeah, okay, yoni eggs or Kegel balls might be a part of that journey, but I'd say they're like further down the road. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent for like everything's worth a try, but we have to make sure that we try that in a place that's like in an appropriate time frame, right? Because even just like our own bodies, the pressure on our pelvic floor can be so damaging. That's why we make you sit in bed for 5 days, because you're not the gravity, right? Gravity is going to, like, we need you laying back. We need you relaxed. It's one of the reasons that we tell everyone to buy a Belly Zinc belly band, because it actually like physically takes the pressure off of your pelvic floor. And it's not a waist trainer, which also stay the hell away from those.
And it also forces them to stay in bed.
And it also forces them to stay in bed.
Because that's what Sam said on the last one.
Yeah, stay in bed. Don't get up. Your job is now to be a food source for this baby, and that is basically your only job. And here's the thing, it's not a small job. We've done the math. Nursing a baby is more hours than a full-time job, right? We know this. So you're not doing nothing, although it feels weird. As women, we are busy, right? And we're always doing that. We always have that mental load, and we're always making those lists. If you want to do something, you lay in bed and you read the 4th trimester. That's what you're doing something. That's what you're doing. You're reading the 4th trimester, right? Or you're listening to the 4th trimester. But yeah, did anybody else have any questions?
I don't see anybody coming up in the questions right now. We did have Sabrina earlier when she had asked about the MSP. She can't believe that it takes 6 weeks for our cervix to close. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. But I mean,
it's person to person.
Depends.
Right? We know, and like I experienced this, I also think that how we treat our bodies has a huge impact on how long it takes for our bodies to heal, right? Like with my first birth, I was like out visiting friends the day after I had her. I did like a sip and see with my whole family. And I remember being like sitting on a donut and like basically Jesse having to kick people out because I was on the verge of tears because I was so sick of hosting people. I didn't do the things that I preach for sure.
Yeah.
But
which is why you know that it works. 5 days in bed.
And it's not anybody's fault. We're not taught these things, right?
No.
And our society is all about doing things and getting back to normal and getting your body back and bouncing back and losing the weight and doing it all. And it's just so unrealistic. It's such an unrealistic expectation. Yeah. So I bled a lot longer with my first. And I would go for like a walk and I'd come home and my bleeding would increase and I didn't make the connection that was my body telling me to slow the hell down. Right. Whereas with Dylan, I bled for a way shorter amount of time. And that's because I didn't do as much. He was born in June and I laid around in the backyard and nursed. And
we got a question.
Yeah.
Sabrina wants to know about sex during pregnancy. Okay. So what's your question, Sabrina?
Yeah.
We'll wait for you. Yeah, with me, it was the opposite. I didn't bleed very much with Hunter. I healed very quickly because I'm lazy and I just like to stay in.
You're not lazy. Relax. You're smart.
No, I'm not. I'm very smart. I like to nap and I like to relax. You're right. And there's nothing wrong with that. My naps are awesome.
No.
But I mean, with the kids, of course, with Michaela, I had Hunter to chase after. And then I did that really stupid thing of having my niece and nephew with me. And like, if we had been friends. She wants to know if vibrators are safe in pregnancy. Hell yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hell yes.
I mean, one thing I will say is that our blood volume increases a lot, which is a mix of good and bad, because I mean, I always think like, okay, so when we have orgasm, it's from an increase of blood flow to the area, right? And so sometimes when that happens, I mean, we can get like, we always have our clitoris, we have our little clitoral hood, although all vulvas look different. Some people have like quite a large clitoral hood, some people don't have very much of it at all, and we can experience like so much blood flow that we end up with like almost like a clitoral erection, essentially. Yeah. And it actually like comes out of the hood and sticks out, which can increase sensitivity, which for vibrators can be a good thing and sometimes an overwhelming thing. So, play around with it. But yes.
She wants to know if there's any risk to over vibrating the baby. I hope not, because I had the Hitachi magic wand. So.
And I still find the Hitachi magic wand like too much for me. I am one of those people that doesn't like a lot of vibrating stimulation. It's like I find it like overwhelming. I get in my own head and I like can't,
Oh, and I'm the one with the power tool.
Right? No, but there is like no way that you're going to harm your baby with a vibrator. Your baby's incredibly safe. You're not going to harm your baby with a vibrator. You're not going to harm your baby with penetrative sex. You can have tons and tons of sex. In fact, it's a really good thing to have lots of sex. It makes us feel good. And, just take it slow, because everything shifts. And sometimes we can't have as deep penetrative sex as we want to. And not because it's dangerous, but because, sometimes it can be painful, right? So we talked about in the beginning, some of us experience that pelvic girdle pain in pregnancy, and that's the real deal. So be gentle with yourself and go slow, and things might feel different. And I do find that some of the best orgasms I've had were actually in pregnancy. I wasn't so worried. I find that a lot of women have this like ongoing dialogue in their head of like, how do I look? Right. And I had this big old baby belly, and so I didn't give a shit. And it felt really good because I just like got to be myself. And I really felt like my baby belly was like really like normal and sexy. And I found my partner really attracted to me. I think it was like this very like it was like a caveman complex of like, I looked, I had this like fertility glow, right? Like,
Oh, wow.
look at this woman brewing my baby in there. And we had some really, really amazing penetrative sex when I was pregnant. I also had anal sex when I was pregnant. So,
Yeah, see, sex is safe.
yeah.
You can have all the sex. You can have the vibrator going. As I said, I mean, you've seen my children running around, and they're not brain damaged or anything. And from the amount
they don't have shaken baby syndrome.
They don't have shaken baby syndrome. I definitely didn't cause any harm. And
gosh,
man, I like I don't even want to go into it. You guys are all gonna think I'm a sex addict so often.
Just a healthy sexual being. We are healthy.
It helps to put you to sleep. If you're really uncomfortable and you can't sleep, have an orgasm. Yeah. Then you can bliss out.
I love that. It is like the ultimate sleeping pill. It really is, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, we have gone off on a high note, pun intended. Oh, we have to do this again. We have to find another way to get you back in here.
What else? What other sexy things?
What else can we talk about? I mean, we have so much.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody had sex in labor with their third.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sex is part of it. I mean, you don't want to do penetrative sex if your waters have released. Yeah. However, during labor, I actually had my husband try and get me going with Michaela because I'm like, I am done with this baby. Like, get her out. Yep. It didn't work. I had to wait till the next day.
Always. I mean, sometimes it works like a charm.
I mean, it took my mind off of the surges. Yeah. So absolutely. That helped. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and if you're curious about sex in birth, go back and listen to watch my other talk that we did. When was that now? A month ago? A month and a half ago?
That was a month ago. Yeah. I mean, this month is almost over, but it was a month ago. And it's under the guide section, What About the Pain? And you'll see Michelle's gorgeous face and smiling and telling all the goods about sex in and how it ties into pregnancy and birth. Yes. And we went into it with that one too.
Always down the rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, I know. We're so bad, but we have to find another way to get you back on here for something because you're just amazing. And of course, you know I love you so much. And I really, really hope that there's no babies coming tomorrow because I missed you last week.
Right? I know. Well, I mean, I wasn't at a birth last week, but if I just forgot. Like, I feel like Steph is my brain on Fridays. She always messages me like, get on transforming. And I'm like, oh, I'm always like doing like dishes or like, I always forget. And I don't know why. I always try to make it, but no, I don't have any excuses. Last week, I just completely spaced.
So what I'm hearing is that if Steph is at a birth, I need to send the message to get your ass onto Zoom.
Michelle has sent me the message before. I'm like, so you coming? I'm like, oh, no, I'm right upstairs.
Get your butt on Zoom. No, that's our therapy every week.
It really, really is.
Oh, we have to get together as soon as this whole stupid COVID thing is over with.
One day.
We have to. You're so close to me. You live so close to me. Like, this is not fair.
I know.
And our girls would love to play together, I'm sure, because Michaela's seen them in the background. She's like, Michelle has girls? I'm like, yes. It's like, I want to play with them.
Right?
It's like, yes, you want to play with everybody, but yes.
Oh, I have girls. That is something I have.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I have to go and feed these children.
I know that's.
And I know you probably have to go eat and put children to bed. And I will see you tomorrow.
Yay!
And I will see everyone next week, same time, Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific. That's 7 p.m. Eastern for you Eastern people. We're all Lower Mainland here. And we're going to be starting, I think, with baby care, I believe it was. And I'm still trying to get some luminaries into that one.
Fun.
Yeah. So if you have anything on baby-led weaning or sleep, you can always go into that one just as an experience as a mom trying to deal with that, because we're going to be talking about being a mom.
Yeah, maybe we'll bully Steph into the talk about sleep, because
can we do that? Can we do that?
Right?
She's really, still watching.
She's really mad at me that I just called her.
Is she watching? Well, you got her on for the podcast.
I know. Oh, she.
Please.
Yeah, right?
She's so gonna kill us.
Yeah, she is. Too bad. I just want to say thank you to everybody. And if you have any deeper questions, please feel free to contact me directly. You can find me on Facebook at the Wildflower Birth Collective. You can find me on Instagram, and
you can find her here.
You can find me here, and you can find me on our website at www.wildflowerbirthcollective.ca. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your experiences. I think that a lot of what I teach comes from other people's experiences. Like I've talked about it before, I learn a lot from sitting at other people's feet and learning from other people's lived experiences. You guys are my best teachers, so feel free to contact me.
Oh, totally. I mean, we are building our wisdom circles back from what the patriarchy took from us. I mean, for a long time, it was kind of whispered, or we didn't really have the platform to be able to talk freely. And now it's like we can get that collective wisdom back.
Right? Let's restart our covens.
Totally. Yeah, totally. All for the covens.
All right. Well, thanks very much. And I will see you all again soon.
And I will see you tomorrow. Bye. I love her so much. And I will see you next week. Same time, same channel. Bye.